CEO of First American Equipment Finance. I've been with the company for about 15 years. Can everybody hear me okay? My voice is great. So First American has experienced 100% organic growth. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our company's growth. I'm going to talk a little bit about my take on millennials in general, those crazy, mythical creatures, and then also talk about some things that work at First American. We have 71% of our workforce right now is millennials. And I'll compare and contrast that to some other financial institutions. And there are some things that we do that we think work, and we've learned. We've made a lot of mistakes and learned a lot along the way. So hopefully you can benefit from that. Our lease and loan portfolio is currently just over $1.27 billion. As I mentioned, it's grown to that quite a lot in recent years. We have 215 colleagues. In 2012, we became a part of a larger financial institution, so we became a part of City National Bank in Los Angeles. And that was sort of an interesting combination because City National is known as the bank to the stars. And so we are an upstate New York, Rochester, New York-based equipment leasing and equipment financing company. And you wouldn't think that those two institutions would have much in common, but City National has been sort of taken a light touch approach in our acquisition and has left us independent and autonomous. And because of their sort of funding costs, as well as their resources, it's helped us experience a lot of growth. And then in 2015, Royal Bank of Canada acquired City National in Los Angeles. And that was actually the largest deal since bank deal since the financial crisis. So it was a $5.4 billion deal that closed in late 2015. So First American, our group of 200 colleagues, this has been the growth trajectory that we've been on over the years and over the course of my history at First American. When we were sitting in 2009, the y-axis had a different scale, so we felt like we were growing like gangbusters, but it turns out we performed pretty well over the past 5 years. This year will be just under $1 billion of new loans and leases that we put on the books. Don't worry, it's mainly capital leases, so I knew that would kill us. Okay. From a culture standpoint, as John mentioned, we've been recognized, we've been very fortunate to be recognized by Fortune magazine and their partnership with Great Place to Work, so Entrepreneur magazine, basically as a top workplace. So last year alone, top workplace for millennials, top workplace for women, top workplace for recent college graduates, as well as medium-sized companies across the United States. And it's something we're very, very proud of, and all of these awards that we've gotten were the result of anonymous employee surveys that we have really no input on. The Fortune rankings are based about 75% on the anonymous surveys and 25% on our benefits and perks packages. So it's really based on what our employees say about us when we can't find out who it is that's in it. And so that means a lot to us to be able to win these awards. So next I'm going to shift away from First American. Unless anybody, I can stop there. If anybody has any questions about First American in particular, if not, the commercial's over. Okay, great. I'm going to talk about the demographics of India for a minute. And I know you're going to not think that this has anything to do, but if you humor me for a minute, I'll bring it back to sort of what we're here to talk about. So this is a demographic chart of the country of India as of the end of last year. And if you look at the bottom of the chart, that's the youngest members, the youngest people, citizens of India. And so those are the children ages 0 to 20 that are going to school. Then you look at sort of the working age in India, and you can see their demographics start wide at the bottom. There's a ton of young people in India, and there's a ton of very few older people at the top. So when you think about this group in their 20s and 30s, these are the folks that are going to college, graduating, supporting a family, buying a house. They're sort of beginning to earn, but they're not earning enough to sort of be large taxpayers, right? And ultimately it's the taxpayers that support the social programs in the country. So if you look next, the next group of people in India, and every country has a demographic chart. Just by show of hands, has anybody ever seen a demographic chart like this? Okay, fantastic. So some of you are very familiar with it. The next group of people in their 40s and 50s, those are really the earners. That's the tax base of the country. That then, of course, supports the people that no longer work within the country that may be sustained on their own savings or social programs. So India has beautiful demographics, that they have a ton of young people to support the older people, and each generation, the children have children that have children, and it all has worked out so far so good for India, other than the overpopulation and all of that. So if you compare and contrast that to the United States, this is what our demographics look like. Okay, so we have these sort of three generations, and I like to, just by a show of hands, how many boomers do we have in the room? All right, boomers. So some interesting facts about boomers that may surprise you. Boomers are responsible for 40% of Apple's sales. Isn't that surprising? In fact, boomers are responsible for 2/3 of the disposable income in the United States. So, of course, you've worked most of your career, you're finally to a good place, and you're buying cool stuff. Boats, second homes, vacations. It's great here near retirement, that kind of thing, beginning to focus on savings. Show of hands, Gen X. One of my Gen X people in the room. And just so that we're using the same definitions with each other, Gen X would be people born in the late 60s and 70s, sort of ages 37 to 52. You know, something happened in the late 60s that, despite what the history books would tell you, people in the United States forgot how to have babies. And so, what's that? The drugs. Well, there was clearly something that was more interesting to people in society than procreating, because we have this sandwich generation that many of you are experiencing now, which is you have your parents living at home with you that are baby boomers or older, and you also have your millennial children living with you, and you just want to be left alone, and maybe that's why you want that guy to hang out. The third generation, show of hands, any other millennials in the room? 1, 2, 3, all right, millennial, 4, awesome. I am a millennial. I am the wise old owl of the millennials. So you can look for the definition of different the generations in different places. I was born in mid 1980. Okay, so that makes me, according to the U.S. Census, a millennial, although it also makes me, I'm either a very young Gen X or a very old millennial. But it gives me interesting perspective on sort of both of these groups. Millennials are by far the most educated, they also have the most student loan debt, most educated, most tech-savvy, largest generation in U.S. history. They're also the largest generation in the U.S. workforce today. So, you know, somebody actually sent me an email in advance of this talk and said, you know, I'd love to hear about the upcoming wave of millennials. And actually today, millennials represent the largest generation represented in the U.S. labor force. So millennials are sort of already here. Millennials are called a lot of different things. Some of the things millennials are called are Gen Y, digital natives. People sometimes call the baby boomer generation the me generation. They now call the millennial generation the me generation. And throughout this presentation, there's been pictures. These are actually our employees at company events. So that's Marietta, Becky, Greg, and Adrian. I'm not kidding. Those are really our people. And what are some adjectives you've heard, and I won't say you've ever used them, to describe millennials? I'm interested. And I won't take offense, because I'm part of Gen X. Entitled. That is true. Well, not true. That is true. What else? What's that? Transitory. Yeah. That's also something that people say about millennials.
Spoiled.
Spoiled? Spoiled. Got it. Yes, that is something people say about millennials. Yes?
Did you ban earbuds at work? None of them have earbuds.
No earbuds. No, it's, yeah, I don't know why. They just, well, they're at an event, so maybe they have, I don't know. Yeah, no earbuds.
Text-only communicators.
Text only, hate the phone. They don't even know phones. I have a funny story about so I have a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, and when Snap went public, right, Snapchat went public, she's always just doing Snapchat, and I, as an old millennial, and her as a young millennial, I don't really get it. And so I thought it would be cool if I communicated with her. And so I said, you know, I'm just interested, do you ever text? And she goes, no, I don't text. And I go, do you ever use Facebook? She goes, yeah, to see what my parents are doing. So how do you communicate with other humans? And she's like, Snapchat. And I'm like, Snapchat, like you send them pictures? And she's like, no, I would text through, send messages through Snapchat. I'm like, I didn't even know it did that. But then, it's sort of interesting that Snap stock has, the IPO had such a big hoopla around it, and it's sort of like they really have locked in people who are teenagers today. Of course, those teenagers don't have any money to spend, which is a challenge for them. But yeah, so I would say millennials, text is the primary means of communication. Yeah.
Living in a bubble?
Living in a bubble? Anything?
Sheltered from some aspects of reality.
Sheltered from some aspects of reality, absolutely. Yes?
Impatient.
Impatient, yes.
Generation TMI.
Generation TMI, yes. I have a funny picture. Yes?
Everybody gets a soccer trophy when they win.
Yes, you get a trophy for last place. It's true. You get trophies for last place. Yes? Socially conscious, yes, that's very good. Yeah.
Still living at home.
Still living in your basement, yes.
Millennials are still doing that too.
What's that?
There's some boomers that are still doing
Yes. Boomers and millennials, they're both at the Gen X's home. Yes, every millennial is special in their own unique way. That is all true. So those are some of the things that people say about millennials. And I think when we say the word millennial or we think the word millennial, we fall into the trap of having images like this go through our head, right? That it's like everybody has a cup of coffee in their hand in every picture. They're, video chatting. They're taking selfies. They are all sitting in a row in front of a brick wall, not talking to one another. They're all on their devices. And one thing we at First American try to do is, we found that no matter what generation we are hiring, whatever generation that person falls into, we try not to stereotype, right? Because there are Gen X members of society that are all of those things. And there are baby boomer members of society that are all of those things you mentioned. And there are certainly millennials that are all of those things you mentioned. But there are also good, hardworking millennials that want a lot of the same things that a lot of the rest of us do. So, when you think about millennials and companies that have a high percentage of millennials in their workforces, you probably think about companies like Apple or Google or Facebook, and you almost envision a bunch of people that are like working on a card table in some Silicon Valley office. But this might surprise you. KPMG, take a guess what percentage of their workforce is millennial? Just under 60%. Ernst & Young, just over 60%. Goldman Sachs, just over 70%. So, millennials are certainly not only making up a large portion of the labor force, but also making up a large portion of a lot of financial service firms, accounting firms, consulting firms, things like that. So, First American, I thought we were unique at 71% millennial, and then when I looked into it, it turns out we're like a lot of companies that recruit out of college and have always had a history of doing that. And then as a result, the oldest millennial is 37. So it's not like, millennials make up large portions of workforces of probably a lot of the companies that you may work with and would be familiar with. Okay, so that's sort of my overall take on millennials. Is just you have to be careful to not stereotype people into a bucket because everybody is a little bit different. That said, there are certain things that I think all new employees to a business or all new employees that are coming out of school today expect. And so, it's interesting in preparing for this. I think I got another email from somebody, and they mentioned I'd love to hear about all the perks that you must offer to be a great place to work for millennials. And I was thinking about it, and I'll share some of those at the end, but it's actually way harder than that. It's actually way harder than investing in benefits and perks. And so 4 things that work for us, I want to go through and talk about why I think they work for us. Transparency, verticalization, which is actually not a real word, it's a fake word, we made it up. Two-way communication, and our culture and communications team, which has made a big difference at our firm. So the first one, transparency. So the first part that I'll call the Instagram effect. Think about a normal millennial colleague that you may have in your office. They have never not had technology, right? From the moment they were born into the digital age. They're digital natives. And so when you think about how they live their personal life, it's not enough to know that their friend is going out to dinner tomorrow night. And it's not enough to know that their friend is going to dinner with their fiance. It's not enough to know that their friend is going out to dinner with their fiance to a specific restaurant. They also expect, in real time, a photo of their food. Okay? That's their personal life. They have complete transparency on all of their friends, their family. They're keeping an eye on that. And then they get into the office, and everybody's having closed-door meetings and whispering, and they're sort of like, so what's going on? And people in the office are like, well, you're not senior enough to know. And that's completely foreign to them because their whole life has been one of transparency. And so that's, I think, just a reality of people that are digitally savvy, that they expect transparency in everything. And so for us, even though we're part of a CCAR-regulated international financial institution, we are very transparent about our financial results. We post our financial results internally on our portal. Our CFO stands up once a month at our all-hands meeting and walks through our financials. There are really no secrets. I am to the point with a 71% millennial workforce that when I have a secret, I get super anxious because I know that they know I have a secret. And so we're very open with our problems. So an example of that would be, if you think for a moment about the biggest challenge you're facing in your business. Okay? Our go-to from a transparency standpoint would be to immediately send out a company-wide anonymous survey asking for input on how to address that giant problem that we probably traditionally, in a traditional business, they would never talk about that problem. It would be something that the managers and leadership would try to figure out and then sort of cascade it down to the employees. So that really is, everything we do is transparent. One of the biggest challenges we've had recently is on career objectives. When a young person joins our company, their span, and somebody said impatient, and that's a great word to describe it, the span of their entire professional career is 6 months, right? So they're 6 months in, and everything in their life has advanced so fast from a technology standpoint, from everything that they've experienced, and then it's just not normal for them to have to wait until the end of the year for an annual review because maybe they're going to get a raise and they don't have a clear path. And so we've documented clear career paths that are objective for almost every position in the company now, which is very, very hard and unique, but something that we've gotten a lot of feedback on that people really appreciate, including recruits. That is, you can hand them during their interview a piece of paper that says, if you do this, this will result. If you don't do that, it won't result. And it's sort of expected today, that level of transparency around career development. The next thing I'll say is verticalization. So we were inspired by a concept called teal leadership by Fred LeLou. And verticalization for us, we have these verticals in our business, healthcare, education, manufacturing, professional services, that focus on serving a specific client industry. And we came to the realization as our business was growing in terms of headcount that we all enjoyed having a big job at a small company as opposed to a small job at a big company. But we were sort of becoming a bigger company, and so we wanted a way to deal with that. And so we broke the company up into a bunch of small business units. Not legal entity companies, but they really treat themselves as a full-fledged company. So we have marketing, sales management, operations, credit, finance, all within a vertical team serving a particular industry segment, and they're managed to a P&L, and they have authority to make decisions on behalf of clients. And our goal is to get to 99% of all decisions are made by the people who are closest to our clients. And that's been hugely empowering for our staff. One other thing I'll say, the first-hand experience from being a part of a large financial institution on real work from day one, I think a lot of businesses fall into the trap of like hiring young people to sort of check the box and say, yes, I have a new person into my department. But then you don't actually give them real work. And I would encourage you to actually just try give them real work. Trust them with real work, and it might actually work out. For us, our vertical teams create the long-term strategic plan. So you can imagine somebody that joins our company today, it's possible that next week they're going off-site to be a part of the 5-year strategic planning for their business, for their vertical. And that input is sort of expected and appreciated by this generation of employee that we have. Next up, two-way communication. We at First American came to the realization recently that there is no possible way you can over-communicate. Like, there has never been a problem in business that everybody sat around and said, wow, we really screwed that up. No, it must have been an over-communication. Like, that doesn't happen. It's always under-communicated. So we have a variety of different ways we communicate in our business, including anonymous surveys. We survey people, our people anonymously all the time. All the time. And so some examples of that would be 2 times a year, we have our employees fill out an anonymous loyalty survey. The only demographic they give us is what department they're in. But also ad hoc surveys. So if we're going to go off-site and do a strategic leadership meeting, my first thought is, well, why don't we ask everybody what we should be talking about? And so it reveals 2 things. One, training and just communication opportunities, but it also provides input from the people that are closest to clients. It's not uncommon for me to do video updates, so I'll, instead of doing a meeting to talk about results or talk about a given issue, I'll film a video in my office with my iPhone and I'll email it out to the entire staff. And that also has been very well received. We have 65-inch digital signs throughout our office with real-time metrics on every employee, stack ranked against others in their function. And believe it or not, we have like 2.7% turnover. So can you imagine that? An employee of First American comes in, whether they're in sales or operations or credit or finance, they have metrics that get tracked in real time and displayed for everybody to see all the time. And they're stack ranked against their peer. And so if we have 90 salespeople, every single day there's a top 10 leaderboard of everything, both activities and results. We use social media in our company not to attract clients, but to communicate with our colleagues' families. So we recognize that as people get married and they have children, what they do at work they're sometimes very proud of. And they want to share that, but a lot of times it doesn't come up around the dinner table when you're late and you have young children and things like that. So we use our Facebook and Twitter handles mainly to talk about what the company is up to, company events, company results, to share with employees' families. And when you think about that, sort of a different way of thinking about social media, I'm sure some of our clients might stumble across it as well, but it's really for our colleagues' families to be part of the company. Because ultimately, when our hardworking colleagues come home late at 7 o'clock and they're like, yeah, sorry I missed dinner, honey, sorry I missed bedtime with the children, you at least want that spouse to be in a place where they sort of at least know what's going on at the company, and they know that the company is succeeding and that employee is an important part of that. And so a lot of our recognition is on social media, as well as sort of what's going on. And then we also do roundtables. The leadership team is always doing roundtables, so we just randomly select 10 colleagues, and we go out to lunch and we just ask them what's on your mind, what are you concerned about, what keeps you up at night. If you had $1 million to spend on the company, what would you spend it on, other than yourself? And so, questions like that reveal a lot about challenges that might be happening in the company. And then finally, our culture and communications team is something that's been a big help for us. So we have about 15 people on this cross-functional, cross-department team. And they volunteer and they're on it for 1 year. And they basically select all of our benefits and all of our perks. And they're actually empowered to do that. So from a benefit standpoint, we have an interesting philosophy on health insurance and other traditional benefits. We split 50-50 with our colleagues. but we let them select what plans are available and what insurance providers we use. And they work hand in hand with our HR department on that. Because, you know, me, I'm not a typical earner at First American. I don't know anything about our health insurance, so I shouldn't be involved in selecting what health insurance we offer. So instead, our cross-functional team of 15 select that. One thing that comes up that's a big part of who we are, and somebody said socially responsible, is charitable initiatives. We don't do anything as a company unless there's a colleague that's behind it. And so it could be, you know, I just had a family member die of this ailment, and so I'm walking for this, and the company supports that very publicly, and sort of the employees all rally around that colleague to do it. So we have very large relationships with Big Brothers Big Sisters of Rochester and some other things. And it's all employee-led, sort of bottom-up. So what happens with our culture and communications team is they get together at the beginning of every year, they anonymously survey the staff on what should they be working on. They come up with recommendations, they meet with me, we talk. The only reason I'm in the room is to just like approve or decline the expenditure. And they come up with a lot of great things, and not a lot of them cost a lot. Most of them are free. So, you know, the first thing they said was the coffee sucks. And before that, nobody told us the coffee sucked. In fact, I knew the coffee sucked, but I didn't say anything. I just thought that's what office coffee should taste like. And so they selected a new coffee vendor, and they love it, and they got the win. The vending machines are terrible. Yeah, I never used the vending machine, so I didn't know. So they got the vending machines. And then what we realized is as we gave them more and more authority, they were coming up with really great ideas. And so every month at First American, employees get together and do an event. And so actually this is sort of embarrassing because I'm a Buffalo Bills fan, and they've been bad for 2 decades. But you know, they haven't been to the playoffs for 2 decades. And so the First American staff in Rochester, New York, they're going to a Bills game. And there's 80 of them going to a Bills game together. And they're all buying their own ticket. We just bought a group package to get a slight discount, so we sort of leverage the First American's buying power to get them a slightly lower cost on a ticket. And then we're buying them the bus to drive them to Buffalo and back to Rochester. And it's a huge event, and it costs us, you know, less than $1,000 to impact 81 employees. And so, and not to mention the sort of spending a whole day on Sunday with one another, the camaraderie and that kind of thing that gets built. So every month we have a combination of concerts, wine tours, and you know, all of those things are completely employee-led. You know, and the company part of it, other than encouraging them to think and talk about these things at work, the company part of it is very low cost, but the upside of the relationships that are built are massive. A lot of these things have to do with just allowing employees to have input. And so one thing we often say is that we're never trying to get consensus, because you could get 230 people, 215 people that we have in the room, and you're never going to be able to have consensus, but you'll always have a voice, and your input will always be considered. And we might ignore it, but you will always have the opportunity on every decision at First American to provide input. And that is very, very highly valued. So my recommendations, and then I'll open up to questions if you have any. I would strongly encourage anonymous surveys of your staff. It costs you nothing. You don't have to do anything with the survey responses. What we would do, you know, is send out an anonymous survey and say, what's on your mind about the business? What are you most excited about next year? What are you most concerned about? And then have in our next company-wide meeting or staff meeting, sort of read through the responses and answer them. It sounds simple, and it sounds like something we should all be doing more of, but it doesn't often happen in practice. We shared a vision with our colleagues of, we want to be the best company in the United States to work for. We also want to be the best company in the United States to work with. And so our culture and communications team, that's sort of their directive, is to be the best company to work for. And they also realize that they can't just buy a bunch of perks, because then we wouldn't be profitable, and then we wouldn't be able to hire more people. And so they sort of are part of the leadership team and making decisions that make the company better. If you're comfortable with filming videos with company updates, our employees love them. They actually hate meetings where we're talking on a stage. I would include as many people as you can in strategic planning, if only to ask them, we are the leadership team, and we're going to go offsite and talk about some stuff. What should we be talking about? And then if you do have a problem in your business, I would just encourage you that, you could just send out an anonymous survey monkey for free and ask your entire staff, like, how should we deal with this problem? We had an issue recently, not an issue, we had certainly a trend in financial services and commercial finance around fintech companies. Now, we lend to large companies, but we feel like this is weird that these fintech companies in the United States are lending to small businesses in a way that's very efficient and customer friendly. And geez, if they ever enter our space, that's sort of an intriguing value proposition. And so, a group of us, probably 10 of us, were off-site thinking about it, and we did what a millennial-friendly company would do. We created a contest, like a business plan contest. And teams of 3 got together and they wrote up a business plan for how we should address the upcoming surge in fintech. And the ideas they came up with were fabulous, and we implemented probably 50 different things that came up through the process. But it was hugely empowering to our staff to be a part of it. It also created promotion opportunities for people that did a really good job. Okay, so that's what I had for you on Millennials and First American, and wanted to see if you had any questions. Yes? Okay.
How are you doing on diversity? I think of the Google memo that went out, the engineer at Google kind of set the industry on its ear. You talked about the millennials, so I'm just curious if you've had any issues with diversity.
Issues with diversity? Is that what your question is?
Yes.
Do we have issues? I wish we were more diverse. I think one of the challenges we have in our business, just speaking candidly, is that we get a lot of employee referrals, which are great because employees refer their friends, but then you end up with a sort of rather homogenous group of people. And so, we try to promote diversity, but we can do better. We don't have any issues around it or negative employee sentiment around it, but I would say it's probably a challenge for our business. We operate in upstate New York, in a suburb of upstate New York, and our demographics are sort of similar to the area we're in. But we hire a lot from the same universities and end up with a lot of this similar type of people. Yes?
I was wondering, and this is Jess, where do you put the big party tables, the yoga bars, and basketball courts? Because that's what we hear about, kind of the millennials. Obviously, you haven't done that, you've been successful. So
yeah, so
extreme in that range.
Absolutely. It's all about sort of having enough respect for the colleagues to actually explain to them, like, we could spend $6,000 on a table or a foosball table, right? And if we could impact 200 employees with a $6,000 investment, and it was meaningful to them, we would do it. But we leave it to them to decide, do you really want to spend $6,000 on a foosball table? And they don't. They actually don't. And they don't want to do the yoga bars, and they actually want to be a part of helping the business succeed. And if they're going to spend $6,000, it might be on, standing desks, which they did, so that they can be focused on their fitness and health while they're at the office and not be sort of sitting in a chair all day. So we would buy the foosball tables and the ping pong tables if that's what they recommended, but they actually don't. If you actually, if you say, hey, $6,000 and spend it on whatever you'd like to spend it on, they don't pick those things in our experience. Yes?
How do your non-millennials react to this very open, technology-based culture? Because it is foreign to a lot of them.
Yeah, it's interesting because we have, one of our oldest colleagues is over 70, right? And when he joined our company, he wasn't very tech savvy. And I think he has actually come around to seeing the benefits of it. We have few adoption issues because 7 out of 10 people are under the age of 37, and so if somebody is over the age of 37, we find our colleagues to be helpful for those people to help pull them along. It hasn't been a huge problem for us. I would say we have millennial colleagues that are terrible with technology. They're good. They're fine with their apps and their iPhones, but thing that actually, excels. Yeah.
What metrics do you use to measure achievement?
Sure. So it varies a lot by department. So some examples would be in our sales department. We do a lot of virtual meetings with clients. So the number of virtual meetings a colleague had this week, the number of proposals they sent out, the number of opportunities they uncovered, the number of sales they made, the number of new clients they brought in. In our operations department, which is sort of our customer service function, we might finance a project that has 12 different suppliers of equipment, and it's complex. And so that person's interacting with the client a lot. So we have a client loyalty survey that we send out that asks weird questions that are loyalty-based questions. It comes from Bain and Company. So the questions are like, first American values people ahead of profits. So they're like weird questions to judge loyalty. And those survey results are updated in real time. The amount of transactions somebody's working on are updated in real time from an operations standpoint. So it varies by role, and those departments have come up with their own metrics to be measured. Does that make sense?
Are they all SMART metrics?
Meaning specific, measurable, actionable, yes. Yes.
Sure.
What's that?
You're sure?
I mean, they might not be smart, like intelligent, but they're all specific, actionable, realistic, and time frame. Yeah.
So it's actually more of a comment, working in an advertising agency with a lot of millennials. Once senior management gets more comfortable in them having a more intrusive role, being on client calls, walking into the CEO's office and saying, I don't like that idea, you have a group of people that get more engaged, and we were billing junior people at higher rates because they were doing the work of seniors that would have never happened in an earlier generation where everything was so stratified by what level you're at.
Yes, we've experienced the same thing, which is, we work for a bank that in Los Angeles that would never put a 25-year-old in front of a client.
Right.
But we do. And so there is certainly operational, operating cost savings between those two approaches. I think in our world of financial services and banking, I think a lot of banks overvalue technical expertise, memorization, and undervalue work ethic and things like that. It's sort of an interesting trade-off. But yeah, we found the same thing, which is if you can train somebody up to speed fast enough to interact with a client, they do a great job, and it certainly from a cost standpoint makes a lot of sense. Yes?
How do you find the work-life balance when there's a need to spend extra long hours at the office? Do they deliver?
It's probably the thing we struggle with the most. That's a great question. We try to have good work-life balance for our colleagues. I don't know how much I think we all struggle with having email on our phone. We're all going to check our email before we go to bed tonight. We're all going to check our email when we wake up in the morning. We don't vacation anymore. Actually, I read something recently that millennials can actually unplug. Gen X and baby boomers are doomed. When they're on vacation, when you go on vacation and you're like, yeah, I'm just going to work because the anxiety I get by not working is just too much to handle. Apparently millennials don't have that. But work-life balance is a big challenge for us because we serve, you can imagine, so we serve CFOs of large businesses across the country. If they pick up the phone and they want to talk to somebody right now, that person needs to be in the office. And so it's a challenge. That's probably one area that we have not yet solved, which is how do we create an environment with enough flexibility. And we're a business that from an IT standpoint is 100% cloud-based, virtual. We can absolutely do our work, but our clients aren't 100% virtual, right? So we do have clients that want to mail in their lease documents and they want to get the countersigned documents back via FedEx, and you just can't do that from home. Because our clients aren't the same sort of demographic as our employees, and so it's a challenge for us. Oh, yes?
Do you find that some millennials are challenged by managing other millennials? Is that a case? And how do you solve that? That's what I've got in my own.
Yeah, Yeah, so I think we have found that it's hard sometimes to move individual producers into management roles. So if you have somebody that's just a rock star at their job, and then you put them in a leadership role, I don't always make the right decision. Whether that's related to a generational thing or millennials, I don't know. We have several very strong millennial leaders in our organization, but I don't know how much of our struggles come from it's just a newer manager that's never managed people before, and it doesn't matter if that's a Gen X or a baby boomer or a millennial. It's just a new manager, and getting that person up to speed is a challenge. Youth hasn't been the reason why people have struggled, I would say. Yes?
In what ways do the millennials in your organization see value from the generations above them?
Yeah, I would say that most of our people are, it's sort of interesting. The stereotype around baby boomers and millennials having a lot in common, I actually think is legit. Who are the Gen X people in the room? We have probably found that baby boomers and millennials get along best in our organization. And Gen X is more sort of individual performance, get out of my way, work hard, play hard. And whereas the baby boomers and millennials that we've found probably want more of a relationship, and they're willing to help and learn from both ways, and they're more open to that. Whereas, I would say we struggle more with Gen X people learning from millennials, or Gen X people wanting to take the time to help a millennial.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, how much of your success is due to the fact that they're not millennials, but they're coming from a conservative city like Rochester, coming from the same universities? How successful would that same approach be, say, in New York City?
Yeah, so we have limited data on that. So we have 5 employees in New York City, and we have 5 employees out in California in sort of hot labor markets. Our employees our turnover is less than other Rochester-based companies. And so from that metric, maybe we're doing an okay job, but you're absolutely right. The fact that we're located in a secondary market with a lot of colleges and universities definitely plays to our advantage. It really does. And also the ability, we've had more and more colleagues start their career in Rochester, work there for 5 years, and then move to one of our opportunities in LA or New York. And those are colleagues that remain loyal. We haven't had more turnover in New York and LA, but we probably don't have enough colleagues there to really measure it. Yeah.
You talked about them choosing the benefits and what they want. Has there been anything striking to you about the benefits that they do want versus what Gen X or boomers would want as benefits?
It's interesting that one benefit that we've been hearing a lot about that I just can't figure out a way to make work is tuition assistance, right? So we're 71% millennial. Every one of our people has at least a bachelor's degree. Most have a master's degree. They have a lot of student loan debt, and we have like 200 of them. And it's like, how can we meaningfully assist them with their student loans without it just being a massive cost? And why don't we just give that to them in salary and let them choose how to spend it? So that's one that frequently comes up that it's a hard one to implement at a company like ours, although it would really benefit our demographic and recruit a ton. There are some things that are just based on where they are in their life, right? Like child care nearby that we negotiated with a daycare facility, and we subsidize a small part of it. But that makes sense for their demographic, and the Gen X and baby boomers in our organization are like, yeah, that makes sense. We have a lot of millennials. I'm trying to think of an example. I can't really think of one of a difference in the benefits between the two.
How about flex time versus PTO?
Yeah, so that's sort of the work from home flex time thing that we struggle with, right? But I would say all of our colleagues want that. And my personal opinion is that we all want it because we're always working all the time. So it doesn't really matter where we all do it, regardless of generation. It's like, you just don't have any time where you're not working. And so I think that's more of a conflict that exists for people in business in 2017 and less about somebody's generation. Accountants. Oh, accountants like flex time.
Yeah, no accrual.
Oh, right. Oh, right. Oh, I got it. So are you referring to like no PTO? You're actually referring to policies around no PTO. That was interesting because that came up in our culture and communications team. Every year we survey, and people say, if we want to be like companies like Google, we should not have PTO. And same thing, I was like, we have this giant accrual. This is going to be fantastic. You know, we can this is going to be great. And took it to the culture and communications team. They're like, no way, I earned that. I don't, you know, I'm not going to vote for that because that's in my bank and I don't want to. And so even if you're 23 with 8 days in your bank, they're sort of like possessive of their PTO time. And they feel like it's something I've earned. And if I went to no, this is the feedback we got, if I went to no PTO time, where the PTO's on track, come to me please, I would feel guilty taking it. But if I earned it, I don't feel guilty taking it. Even though when I take it, I'm going to check emails and respond anyway. So. Right back in.
What is your view of the impact of the Generation Z now that's coming on?
Yeah, so that's like my babysitter. I don't know. You know, it's interesting. My sense is that the social consciousness and wanting to work for a company that has a purpose beyond the business purpose seems to be magnified the younger the employee is. You know, I think when we survey our colleagues about what they really like about it, it's less about, it's most about career advancement. I want to work with smart people and learn from them and get better myself. But a lot of it, almost a surprising amount to me, is based on the social consciousness. And I see it even more with the generation behind the millennials that, like I had the opportunity recently to have a conversation with what seemed to me like the smartest high schooler I've ever met in my whole life. I did a talk at the bank, a banker came up to me and said, can you talk to my high school son? Oh boy, yeah, I guess. What do you want me to say to him? And so this high school son was telling me everything he has accomplished in high school, and I was like, that's incredible. You can punch your ticket anywhere. First off, an interesting thing. I asked, like, he said something like, I have a 102 average. And I was like, 102 average? I didn't know they did that. Are you the valedictorian? And he's like, no, we don't do valedictorians anymore. And I'm like, oh, that's a weird thing. They don't make the students anymore. But, you know, this was somebody who could get into any Ivy League school. His credentials were unbelievable. His the charity work that he had done was outrageous. And he was like, you know, I just don't know. I think I just want to do something that just, you know, betters the world. And I was like, well, don't run up a lot of student loan debt. But I sense that more from the generation behind that. It's even less about maximizing shareholder value and, you know, things that you know, businesses focus on, and more about like how can I change the world? How can I help the world? You know, when you think about even like Facebook's mission to, that's what their employees really get into, which is, you know, to connect to the world. That's like, they also make a lot of profits doing it, but that's sort of the focus, and it seems to be more of a focus the younger the employee is. Yes?
Congratulations for opening the dialogue across the generations. I think it takes a lot of guts. A lot of organizations need to do that. When you invite input and you get a dissenting input, people say, we think you should do this, and you decide we're going to do that. How do you provide feedback to be able to continue the conversations? You just don't shut down the input that you want to receive.
Yep, it's to address it. So, you know, some of the hardest things I have to do is I'll do a monthly all-hands meeting, and I'll stand up, and a lot of times it will be following an anonymous survey. And, you know, when things are anonymous and people really believe it's anonymous, and it is, they're very free with their feedback, right? And you really have to take feedback as a gift, because if they're going to think that either way, so you might as well know. right? So I'll put feedback up and it'll be about me personally, it'll be about, and we'll just address it. Now, in terms of like strategic direction, we get that a lot too, where people are like, I think we should expand into Germany. And so we'll put that bit of feedback up and I'll say, we're not doing that right now, and here's the considerations why, and does anybody want to provide input on that? Because I could be wrong, but that's the way we think about that problem, and we'll continue to reevaluate it. And please don't hold back on that feedback if this continues to be an opportunity, but as of now, we're not going to go in that direction, but your input was heard. And if there are others of you that feel that way as well, shoot me a note or stop by, but this is the way we think about that problem, we're not going to do that. And so it's just publicly addressing it, which we find is best to do, I find is best to do verbally. And we use some internal mechanisms like email and chatter, which is our Facebook for the enterprise. It's sort of our social media feed internally on our portal to push out other information. Yep.
You know, I've heard you talk a lot about benefits and asking opinions of everybody and so forth. What about the softer side, like respect and civility and trying to develop, you know, connections with each other? And, you know, is the senior leadership team, are they really interested? Do they show their faces? I don't know if I'm, you know, I guess that's maybe a culture or something, but, you know, you can work with companies that are, all they do is work and they want to get out of there. And I'm the one that said impatience. There's impatience in a lot of them. So can you comment on that at all?
Yeah, so certainly part of our, that I might have missed, I definitely missed on the communication side is our managers do one-on-ones with every employee every week for an hour. And so when you think about our organizational design, if you're a manager, you're spending a lot of time, and that's not all that, you know, a very small component of that is business discussion, right? It ends up being more about people's life and their goals and their dreams and whether or not they're on a path to realizing that. So I would say that's one part I missed, sorry about that, but that's a requirement of a manager in our company, and it's their primary job, which is important to us to have that sort of mentorship. And then we have various groups where peers, you know, work with each other. It's actually quite a collaborative environment, and I think that's probably the sort of respect for one another and winning together and not hiring. Our hiring model is sort of interesting as well. We test people. We give them a personality test and a Wonderlic test, which is the test that NFL teams give to people coming out of college to see if their IQ is high enough to learn the playbook. And then we also do a personality test, and then they'll meet their entire vertical team, that small business unit, the entire team before they get hired to make sure that they're a fit. And then we focus a lot on day one. So I mentioned respecting people as an individual. When we hire somebody and they accept our offer letter, we ask them to put together a one-page sort of PDF, just some pictures of their personal life and what they like to do and what some things that are interesting facts about them and what their career was before they joined, even if it was just, you know, I was in college and these are some of the things I've done. And that gets sent out on the first day of everybody's employment so that people sort of get to know each other as people. And I think friendships really are forged. If you were to, you know, look at the 81 people that are going to the Bills game, that's like the worst way to spend a Sunday if you're a Bills fan, is going to a Bills game. And they actually like to hang out with each other outside of their office, and they're actually friendships, and they're in each other's weddings, and it's really a sort of a magical thing.